The CW Chronicles. Sinners. Written by Silvano Williams. All content copyright 2013-2023. All rights reserved. Chapter 10. A Sinner Amongst Gods. The remains of my shuttle floated amid the accumulating debris of destroyed vessels that orbited the planet. I was just another piece of junk, presumed dead by the enemy and ignored. But they were mistaken. I was alive and in the process of bringing my piece of shit explorer spacecraft back to life by punching commands on a failing holographic keyboard, while also trying to interpret a staticky cabling diagram that was displayed on a small monitor at the base of the cockpit console. I spliced a couple of wires, attempting to restore full power to the cockpit. Instead, I managed to turn on the feed to CW's microphone. To my surprise, Villain's voice was the first to boom out of the speakers.
Pick one.
His voice reverberated inside my helmet. CW answered back with an uncharacteristically authoritative
No.
Then there was a loud crash and a lot of commotion. I used my spacesuit's controls to reroute the audio from the cabin speakers to my headset and adjusted the settings to get rid of the background noise. "Captain," I called out, but he didn't answer. A status bar on my suit's HUD stated his earpiece was offline. I continued to work on hot wiring the shuttle. The next set of wires I smashed together did the trick. About a quarter of the console's controls lit back up. It was enough functionality for me to trace CW's communicator to an island not far from the mainland. "Damn it, C. I'm gonna find a way to get to you," I said to him. Even if he couldn't hear me, I knew he could feel me trying. The commander and Ilona unexpectedly appeared on a floating display right in front of my face. It flickered and hissed with spurts of static. "Hi again," I nonchalantly said to Ilona. The commander leaned forward to see me better on his monitor screen.
"Lieutenant Vlad,"
he exclaimed.
"what are you doing?"
I got annoyed. "I'm getting this ship back together so I can help CW. What does it look like?" Ilona put her hand to her mouth and frowned. I couldn't tell if she was upset or just surprised and happy to see me alive.
"Brave, but do not bother,"
the commander said. He then turned to another screen and spoke to it.
"Prepare for extraction. Concentrate all efforts on the defense of the command center. Activate the SOCW protocol immediately."
"What's the SOCW protocol?" I asked. Turning back to my monitor, the commander said,
"We are flying down to the planet to rescue CW and whatever survivors we can pick up, Lieutenant. Then we are retreating. I will send someone to pick you up right away."
"Villain is down there with him," I scoffed, knowing that no one except for maybe CW could stand up to Villain.
"We know,"
the commander said bluntly.
"That is the reason we are taking this risk. We must get the captain out of there. Villain has..."
But he stopped himself. "Come on, Commander," I insisted. "Ilona, what is it?" Ilona stood in front of the commander as he turned away to give orders to a group of officers outside of my view.
"Vlad,"
she said, lowering her voice as if she didn't want anyone else around her to hear.
"I've studied some of Villain's Space Armada pilots and identified what he used to bring them back to life."
"What do you mean?" What she had said was severe, but I didn't understand why she was being so secretive considering the shit show we were all in.
"Villain has acquired something horrible and unnatural. Something the commander believes is dangerous. It has the potential to seriously injure CW."
"Oh," I replied with a hint of disbelief. CW was a champion, and as far as we all knew, nothing could hurt him. Besides, what could be more unnatural than CW and Villain at this point?
"We believe it can kill him,"
she whispered. "What do you mean, kill him?" I said. "That's not possible."
"Vlad, the commander knows of a being so powerful its blood can corrupt the very source of life in the cosmos. We believe it's how he created this armada."
The commander knew about this? I was confused, but mostly I felt disappointed. Why didn't he tell us about it before?
Vlad, we are preparing for CW's extraction.
Ilona said, this time matter-of-factly, giving me the vibe she was about to cut off communications. Don't blow me off. I was furious. Commander. The commander took a step toward the monitor to answer.
Because,
He said,
it was on a need-to-know basis, and you did not need to know until now.
Then he abruptly terminated the comlink, without giving me a chance to retort. Ilona. I cursed, banging my fist on the console with every syllable. Don't disconnect me, goddammit. Their monitor screen fizzled away. I looked out to see the command center begin its entry into the planet by blasting and crashing through the blockade of Space Armada ships. I watched as it rammed its way through the Space Armada and slowly disappeared into the planet's thick atmosphere. Looking around desperately for more answers, I felt deceived for a split second, but feeling like a victim wasn't really in my repertoire of defects. Not having CW or Ilona in my life anymore? Because they got killed here. What would I do? If Ilona and the commander were going to sacrifice themselves to rescue CW, then the least I could do was take a few more of the Space Armada jerks down with me. I buried my feelings and refocused. I had to find a way to activate the weapons systems and to be useful again. Back on the planet, Villain clutched in his hand the froggy with the broken arm and walked away from CW to stand next to his hovering fighter. He brought the froggy up to his hooded face to see if it was still alive. The froggy took a few deep breaths and slowly opened its eyes.
Ironic.
Villain said with a faked tone of wonder.
How this one clings to life.
Villain then opened his ship's cargo door. The cargo hold shook as something inside moved and crashed the metal crate against the walls. Gurgling and scratching noises resonated from within. A trickle of blood dripped out the bottom of the crate to the wet ground below, accumulating into a small puddle of what looked like decomposed effervescent waste. Villain stepped away from it in repugnance. The crate drew CW's curiosity and attention, making him take deep breaths of anxiety as he observed it. The blood on the ground baffled him so much, he did not notice the Space Armada craft that dove down to ram him. It swooped down and flew straight into CW. He instinctively grabbed onto it to stop it from crashing, his fingers easily digging themselves into the metal hull. The ship dragged him several hundred feet away from Villain. CW dug a deep trench into the ground with his feet attempting to stop it, but then they tumbled out of control, making him lose his footing. When they finally came to a crashing halt, the Space Armada pilot unloaded all his arsenal on CW and exploded on top of him. CW ended up buried a dozen feet into the wet soil, the Space Armada ship wrapped around him like a garland of shredded metal.
You could have stopped that from happening, if you wanted, Weenie.
Villain said contemptuously. CW attempted to pull himself out of the impact basin, slowly bending the metal remains away from his body to break free.
You have gone too far this time.
CW answered back, catching his breath.
One way or another, you will pay for these crimes.
With just a few rapid strides, Villain ran to CW and reached down to him with one hand. He grabbed CW by the neck, still holding the injured froggy with his other hand.
You know that is impossible.
He growled and pulled CW up out of the dirt, raising him above his own hooded head.
No one in the Weirdiverse has the power to stop me, Captain. Not even you.
CW did not resist.
What have you done, Villain?
CW asked, looking past him, staring at the charred ground where the blood was being absorbed. The blood had turned the moist orange earth into black and dried-up ash. The water surrounding the decaying puddle began evaporating in a sizzle as the corruption slowly expanded.
It is obvious, isn't it? I have destroyed the life on this and many other planets. And I found the way to cause chaos within the very life force of the cosmos.
No, Villain.
CW said, troubled by the blood.
What is in that crate?
You know what it is, Weenie. You should be more concerned about the truth of the useless beings that inhabit this worthless planet, though, since that is why we are here.
Villain brought CW back down and dangled the froggy in front of his face.
But first things first,
he said, and released his grip on CW to make him stand on his own. Before CW's feet had even hit the ground, Villain swiped at him and tore the warped metal that was wrapped around him. What little was left of his tattered and burnt Dimension police uniform disintegrated with Villain's might. CW's purple cape flapped wildly behind him, just as the gusts of wind picked up even more. His golden medallions sparkled with the strikes of thunder above them. His indestructible red skin-tight suit was blackened from the explosions and caked with reddish mud, yet it still conformed to and showcased CW's musculature underneath. Villain looked up and down at him, acknowledging CW's radiation of power.
That's more like it,
he said, and without warning he clotheslined CW into the ground. Villain stood over CW purposefully, with slow and deliberate steps, slowly bending down over him, daring CW to escape or defend himself. CW remained still, looking up at the froggy in Villain's hand, knowing any action he took would mean the froggy's death. Villain then punched CW repeatedly in the face. Each hit echoed in the distance, rumbling with deep thuds into the depths of the ground beneath them. CW's upper body was half buried in the mushy dirt after Villain finished with his sudden attack. Still, CW did not resist.
Why do you act hurt and so submissive?
Villain asked, enraged. CW took a heavy breath and wiped the mud off his face with his hand.
Unlike you, Villain,
he said,
I do not need to search for more power than was given to me. I am meant to have limitations, and I do not need to retaliate for what you do to me.
Villain grabbed CW by the throat with his free hand and pulled him back up to his feet again.
We have no limitations, fool. You have self-imposed weaknesses, weenie. Look at me. I am the paramount outcome of our destiny,
he asserted and shoved CW's head, making him stumble back a few steps.
You are a weakling, a disgrace.
The froggy awoke and began to squirm. The froggy's movement caused CW to reach for it and try to take it from Villain's grasp. Villain grabbed CW by the wrist, immediately stopping his forward motion. CW grabbed Villain by the forearm and tried to pull his wrist free, but Villain's grip and arm remained unmoved.
What you have become, Villain,
CW cried out,
is destruction. I will never be part of the reality you envision.
At that very moment, the small island they were on shook on its foundation, and the ocean surf splashed hundreds of feet into the air. The ground underneath them splintered loudly, which made the froggy shrill in fear. CW turned his head away from Villain to see the reversed magnetic pulse penetrating the ground on the mainland.
How about enslavement, weenie? Would that fit your plan?
CW turned to Villain, breathing heavily, this time with a look of unwavering determination in his eyes.
You are wrong.
CW grunted, finally freeing his wrist and pushing Villain's arm away.
I will save them,
he said, standing defiantly in front of Villain.
Unlike you,
Villain said, unaffected by CW's stance.
I know our truth, weenie. I know the reason for our existence. If you have your way, the result will be the enslavement of anyone who opposes your rule. Or will you deny that this isn't what this Dimension police of yours has been doing?
Villain took a threatening step toward CW and held the froggy up to CW's face. CW did not flinch. He stared bravely into Villain's soul-searing red goggles, ready to defend the froggy.
What exactly is your plan, Captain? You won't do what it takes to get rid of what stands in your self-righteous way. You have burdened yourself with such ridiculous limitations that you were unable to stop me from destroying this planet. You could have single-handedly taken out every ship in my armada to stop this. What did you call it? Destruction. Massacre. This was just a test, and you failed. You could have saved these stupid, useless beings, and you refused as I expected.
CW became indignant.
Refused. How could I refuse to help innocent lives?
Did you save them?
Villain pointed to the mainland with the froggy's head.
Are they alive?
Villain then brought the squirming froggy back and raised it to CW's face.
In a matter of minutes.
Villain said.
This will be the last of its kind. You have done nothing to save it other than squirm and feign being hurt, Weenie. Ironically, your Dimension Police had no reservations about killing my armada.
That.
CW choked on the words that came out of his mouth.
That is a lie.
However, he knew better as soon as he said the words defending the Dimension Police. His own power made him realize Villain had told him the truth about that. By just looking up to the skies, he knew something awful was happening. Villain squeezed CW's face with his vice-like hand.
Captain Weenie,
He growled.
don't you get it? We are gods in all the dimensions. Everything out there is as powerless against us as these insignificant beings.
No.
CW mumbled back.
Release it at once, Villain.
Or what, Weenie? If you try to take it by force, I'll crush it with a twitch of my fingers. Then what? You are incapable of being responsible for any death, aren't you?
Villain waited for an answer, but CW just stared at him silently. Annoyed, Villain pushed CW away dismissively.
Do I even need to say it?
Villain said as he walked back to his ship.
Don't move, or I will kill it.
Villain opened the cockpit and took out a Dimension Police standard-issue translator, like the one CW had attempted to use earlier. He then walked back to CW and put the translator in front of the froggy's face.
This is what you failed to save, you idiot.
He said in a low tone, shaking the froggy to get it excited. The froggy started to yelp and croak. The translator's modulated voice spoke.
We are sinners.
It said.
Gods have come to take us at last. Make us pay for our sins.
CW gasped and fell to his knees.
I'm here.
He wept.
I'm here. To save you.
The translator chirped in the froggy's language, to which the froggy answered back.
Save us. Honor the prophecy and destroy us. We are sinners. Take our sins.
CW put his hands up to his face.
I will save you.
He said into his hands as he feebly knelt forward until his knuckles touched the soft muddy ground. Villain looked down at CW unsympathetically and turned back to his fighter.
We are sinners.
The translator yapped the froggy's devastating message as Villain walked away.
The prophecy has come true. Take us. Make us pay. We are sinners.
Villain threw the froggy and the translator inside the cockpit. He then pressed some buttons on a small screen that appeared just outside of the ship.
Self-destruct if Weenie or any of his slaves attempt to rescue the froggy.
Villain said to it and clicked on the screen. The cockpit closed. Then the fighter's motor came alive. The ship hovered for a few seconds, then zoomed away from them, flying to the mainland.
There is only one way to save them, Weenie.
Villain said, looking up at the sky.
I am their savior.
Order shall always prevail, Villain. You are chaos. You are evil.
Villain replied angrily with a deafening bellow.
Chaos isn't evil, Weenie.
The echo of his roar had not yet dissipated when CW found himself face to face with Villain again. Villain grabbed CW by his cape and pulled him up from the ground. Then, just as abruptly, he head-butted CW and double-punched him in the chest with such force that CW soared uncontrollably away from him through the air and toward the mainland. The impact from Villain's hit became a thunderous roar that traveled around the planet and back several times. Villain jumped after CW, his jump was so powerful it didn't arc. He skimmed over the water in a straight line at supersonic speed as if he were flying. The command center's silhouette was discernible through the thick layer of clouds and storms above the mainland. Flying between the lightning, tornadoes, and thunderstorms, swarms of Space Armada ships lit up the sky around it with their onslaught as they tried to bring it down. Villain proposed he would destroy it next if it survived his armada's attack.